Our free workshop today is called Wild Love Affair, How Your Dark Feminine Sparks a Spicy Relationship Makeover. Now, this free workshop is going to be good for people who have been in relationship for a long time. For those of you who are in the first blushes of relationships, so that you don't ever get to a place where things start to fizzle out. And for those of you who may be looking for love, I promise there's going to be something here for everyone, because we're in this journey of really getting to know what I call our dark feminine. And this is something I'm super passionate about. I really believe for women leaders that the dark feminine is the future of leadership, because she holds the keys to our greatest power. And there's so much to share around that and why I'm so passionate about her. And I really feel like so many people are going to be talking about the dark feminine, and it's already happening. It's so up in the collective right now, and we can feel how intense the world is getting, like day by day by day. And I think that's the dark feminine coming in, because the dark feminine is that part of us that it knows how much power we have and knows how magnificent we are, and also knows where we're not stepping into that power and where we're playing small. And so she wants to come in and crack us open to our full power and purpose, because she knows we have a lot to do here on the planet. Some of you may be familiar with the Hindu goddess Kali, and she comes in with her sword of truth and love, and she slices away all that does not serve. There's so much more to the dark feminine, but that's a great example of it. And so I really feel like the dark feminine is the next frontier for those of us on the forefront who want to help create an amazing world and make the world a better place. So thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you're curious in this topic, because I think too that the dark feminine wants us to have a wild love affair, and she can show us how to do that. Because when you've been in that place where love feels amazing, a good relationship, when it's in a good place, totally amplifies like what you're here to do on the planet, right? And you also know when like your relationship isn't in such a great place, that is a weight that takes you down, that gets in the way of what you're here to do on the planet. So ideally, we're all in wild love affairs that amplify our power and support us in creating an amazing world. Is that something that's interesting to you? I'm very excited about this topic. I've never taught it all quite in this way, and it's definitely some of my favorite content. So I'm very excited. All right, so first up, just a little bit of backstory. I'm a digital nomad. I travel and work from anywhere, which is great. I love that I get to have that freedom. So I'm currently on the Big Island in Hawaii, and I'm staying with my friend Alexander. I rent a room from her on a 7-acre farm with macadamia nuts and papayas and avocados and chickens and ducks, and you'll hear the roosters. They come in at the best times. And it's just so good to be surrounded by luscious beauty as I'm on this journey of really tending to this body of work on what I call the feminine operating system. Because I really believe, as women, like we all had this patriarchal operating system, like automatically installed into our hard drive, and we never had a say in the matter at all. We don't even realize how much it's impacting us. It's kind of like trying to explain water to a fish, right? And meanwhile, let me just say too that the patriarchal operating system doesn't serve the men either, but at least it's based on masculine values, right? Like, not the exalted ones, albeit, but at the same time, at least it's in the right wheelhouse. Whereas for us women, it's not our natural design. We have feminine skills and we don't even know how to use them because nobody's taught us. So I'm really excited. My desire is to write the operator's manual of how we reclaim our raw feminine power and learn how to use it in our feminine operating system. So for me, the dark feminine is a cornerstone to our feminine operating system. And we need to know how to be able to understand how to work with her. Because so many people think dark is bad, and that is not the case. Like, the dark feminine is sort of this place, like think of the power of a coming storm. Or think of the power of the potent roiling ocean. I think of the power when you feel a flash of rage, or maybe grief that totally kind of washes over you and makes you feel like how much you loved, right? Like, this is the place of the dark feminine. She is the formless, raw primordial substance of the universe that we could call like what was around before the Big Bang came in and created form, right? So that amount of power lives inside of you. And no one's taught us how to use it, so we're all a little afraid of it because it is a little distractive and it is a little terrifying. But the dark feminine can show us how to work with her to utilize that power in our purpose. So that's where I get excited. So that's the backstory. We've been talking about the dark feminine, and there's also an invitation for those of you who may like to go deeper into this dark feminine experience. I'm creating a container for women leaders to do the deep work in sisterhood, to do the excavation, to learn how to work with the dark feminine, to get into practical and grounded skills so that we learn how to ride the waves of life and we don't get taken down by our emotions, by our triggers, by, kind of getting the rug pulled out from under us in one way or another as it happens when we're out, leading our missions, right? So it's something I'm very passionate about. And doors opened last week to the dark feminine experience for women leaders. And I'll share more about that at the end. You can find out more at darkfeminine.com. And amazing women have already said yes. They looked at the invitation page and just knew in their bones that it was meant for them. So perhaps it's the same for you. We'll see. And we're going to have a great class today with lots of great content because I want you to understand how to create a wild love affair for yourself. Sound good? All right. So let me just get into my body. Make sure I don't stay up into my head because as women, all of our power lives down in our bodies. And it's so easy to live cut off from the neck and live from the neck up, right? That's the way we've been taught. That's the way the entire universe does it in our culture. But no, we need to get down and into our bodies. So, as I was thinking about how I wanted to share this content for today, it occurred to me that if a woman is not having a wild love affair in her life, I can almost guarantee there are 3 things that are happening that we could call them mistakes, but it's, I don't want to put a label on it. It's more just that there's 3 things we're not doing. So number 1, there's some cleanup and debris in the way of your power flowing, where you've got resentments and core wounds that need to be cleared up and are getting in the way of your wild love affair. Number 2, you don't know how to fully surrender and allow your partner to become your hero. That's deep. And then number 3, you don't know how to access your own turn on and pleasure and take on the responsibility of cultivating that for yourself. So these are the 3 things that I can almost guarantee are what is going on if you're not having a wild love affair in your life with your partner, or perhaps you don't have one at all, which, we've all been in these various spots in life. And so I want to go into these in more depth and not just talk about them, but give you some real concrete skills of places to change that so that you can create a makeover and create a wild love affair for yourself. Okay. And I really believe that the dark feminine is the one who shows us how to transform all of these things. She shows us how to transform so many things. And I think this is such a perfect topic because tomorrow is Valentine's Day. And, that's such an interesting day in our culture. But at the end of the day, it's an opportunity to really put our focus and our attention more on love than we might on other days, right? So what a beautiful opportunity to kind of dive into love today and look for places where we can all cultivate more love. Sounds good to me, right? Does it sound good to you? Okay, so we're going to go into some nuts and bolts content of how to work with and create a wild love affair for ourselves. We'll do some embodiment. I want to give you some exercises of how to get into the body to work with this. And then, like I shared, I will share an invitation into the dark feminine experience. And you can listen to see if that's something that appeals to you or not. I know that you will know in your body for sure if it's something that's meant for you. Okay, great. So I want to pull up the chat. Some people will be on live on Zoom with me, and some people will be in the Facebook group, the Feminine Operating System Sisterhood. And so feel free if there's a question that you have, or if you want to say that, oh, that really spoke to me, like mark something for yourself, by all means, let's have this be an interactive conversation. So I just want to check over on the Facebook group. Okay, great. We've already got some people. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Hannah. And I know we've got Sharice on Zoom with us. Awesome. Okay, great. So glad to have you guys here, you ladies. Got to catch myself with that. And I just want to invite us all to have a moment to breathe into our hearts first. Perhaps you place your hands on your heart, bring your attention there, and imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart. It's good to get connected there. Life is getting intense, intense, and intense for all of us, and we want to keep remembering how to come back to our heart. It's a place of getting centered, right? Okay, great. So let's go into this content. All right, so first up, what may be in the way of you having a wild love affair and how you can transform that is we want to look at that first piece I shared of making sure that you clean up the debris in your field and your being. And this is a big piece of the journey. Really, we need to do this everywhere. We need to do this in regard to our purpose, in regard to our power, and absolutely in regard to our relationships. Because basically, intimacy is created by a connection between two beings, right? And ideally, that flow of energy is moving. However, if old resentments and old hurts start to clutter up as debris in that field of connection and energy between you two, Kim Anami calls it like that there's a window pane between you and your partner. And anytime you have a resentment that doesn't get expressed or an old wound, it kind of just is mud splattered on the window pane, and then it becomes muddy between you two. And then there's no place for the connection and the intimacy to occur. It's really quite simple. You know, we've talked about this in other classes on the dark feminine because we've talked about power leaks, we've talked about purpose orgasm. So let me break it down for you. The whole world exists on a flow of energy, right? So energy is either moving or it isn't. If energy is moving, then there is flow and there is health. If energy is not moving, then it becomes static and it builds up a charge and the energy flow is blocked, and that's when disease comes in. So when energy is not able to flow because you've had a resentment that you maybe squashed and just sort of suppressed, or you have an old core wound that came up, but like you're afraid of that deep level of sensation and feeling, and so you stop that, then what's happening is you're kind of squashing the energy and creating a charge. And then things can't flow. And so the natural spark between two beings, the arc of polarity, if you will, isn't there. So let me explain that a little bit more too, because I really geek out on this stuff. Hope you guys love it too. So I studied a modality years ago in the healing arts, 20 years ago, called Polarity Therapy. And at its core, it was about balancing energy, but it was far more complex than that. But the basic gist was that everything in the universe operates in a way that there's a positive pole, there's a negative pole, and there's a neutral pole in the middle. And it's the arc of polarity between the flow of these magnetic poles that creates power. And so this is why the dark feminine is so important, because for those of us who got indoctrinated into the law of attraction over the last 10, 15 years, we were taught to really focus on the positive. And, you know, there's some aspects to that have validity. You know, we do want to pay attention to our thoughts for sure. But at the same time, if we only focus on the positive, then we're actually not creating any power. I want you to really get that, right? Like, power happens when you're using both ends of the pole and the arc of polarity gets created. So this is why the dark feminine is coming in to kind of right our wrong of thinking like, oh, we need to think positively. No, we do not. We need to like love the whole journey. We need to be comfortable in the positive. We need to be comfortable in the negative and in the neutral. Because really what I learned back in the day is that you want to know the way you transcend duality? Like you put your attention on both ends of the spectrum simultaneously. If you can put your attention on something, the positive pole of something and the negative pole of something at the same time, it brings you into the center and you transcend. So this is why the dark feminine is coming in to educate us of like, we need to be understanding more about the negative pole, which meanwhile, we're the ones that put the language on that, right? It's all semantics. It's not negative. It's just the way that you are with it. It's all just pure sensation and feeling at the end of the day, right? Okay, so I call it dark feminine physics. That's the physics behind it all. So if you have an emotion and feel something and you don't allow yourself to feel it all the way through, because emotion is energy in motion. Ideally, you feel it, you express it, you feel it all the way through your body, and then it's done and you move on. But that's not what we were taught, right? We were told to be afraid of our emotion. So the emotion comes up, we stop it in its tracks. The energy and motion just gets stunted. And then that's where you start to build up the static and the charge, right? So here's the thing that's very important for you to know. Clearing your charge is your responsibility, nobody else's. So even if you get into a kerfuffle with your partner or anyone else in your world, and you just like, you've got that charge, understandably so, no judgment on it at all. But here's the thing, that charge is yours. You need to do what I call emotional hygiene, and you need to clear that charge first before you then ever try and have a conversation with the person you may have gotten into the kerfuffle with, right? So there's a lot of self-responsibility here that we need to learn in order to be powerhouses out in the world. And the dark feminine's coming in to teach us that, right? So I want you to really get clearing the charge is your responsibility. So even for those of you who've been in partnerships for a long time, of course you have a lot of charge built up. Of course. I mean, it's the human condition. There's going to be things you've withheld. There's going to be resentments. There's going to be definitely old hurts. I mean, you know, we women just remember everything, right? So unfortunately, you need to do some cleanup on aisle 5 in order to clear some of that mud on your side of the window pane. And I guarantee it will start to create more connection between you and your partner. For sure. So this is where the dark feminine comes in, because she wants to teach us how to be more comfortable in our emotions and allow them to move through us, because we are emotional creatures as women. The dark feminine wants to come in and teach us about our power so that we learn how to not leak our power, and we learn good power hygiene so that we're not kind of leaking it out in all these different ways. So the dark feminine comes in to show us how to clear our debris so that we can actually have that connection with our partner of intimacy. Okay? So let me know if there's any questions or if that's resonating for you. So that's sort of step 1, where the dark feminine comes in to support us to create a wild love affair. Because if you've got debris in your field, I kind of see it like asteroids, you know, circling a planet, like you got to clear out that debris, and that's your job to do. And then that's going to leave you more available to create the arc of polarity with your partner. Okay, cool. Let me just check on the Facebook group. Hi, G, welcome. Hi, Coco. Glad to have you all. And Sandra and Stephanie, I think I said that earlier. Awesome. Okay, so let me give you a good solid tip of how you can start to clear your charge. We're actually going to go into this a lot in the dark feminine experience for women leaders, which I'll share more about at the end, because this is just so important. And we need this for our leadership. We need to learn how to clear our charge constantly. But for today, a really simple way to do that is to get it all out onto the page, right? Like if you've got some stuff that you're feeling a little cranky about, almost verbally vomit it onto a written page. You could handwrite it, you could type it out, whatever creates more flow for you. You might even do it into a voice memo of some sort. Whatever creates the easiest flow for you. But get it out. You almost want to kind of bitch a little bit. Like you can bitch, you can whine, you can be cranky, and sort of just like get it out. And you might even want a bit of a sentence stem if you want some form to support the process. So it could be like, I am cranky because, and then just keep finishing it. Or I bitch that. I bitch that. And then one of my former mentors, Mama Gina, she likes to call it the term swamping when we go down into like the deeper, more intense emotions. So you could say, I swamp this, I swamp that, and just get it out. Now, this written or verbal vomit of your charge is not something you ever share with anyone. Like, you get it out and then you destroy it. So put it in the fire, delete it, like hands down, make sure nobody ever finds it, because you don't want to be enlightened at all in this. In fact, you want to be really kind of highly unenlightened, like as gnarly, as victimy, as whiny as you possibly want to be, but get it out. Because you heard earlier that I share, like, you just got to get things moving. Energy that is moving is health. Energy that is not moving is disease, right? So we're just looking for ways to get this to move. So Shivani chimed in. He said, how did you know? Of course, right? It's just part of the journey as women. Like, we're going to have shit, and we're going to have shit we need to clear. So let's take on the responsibility to do our own hygiene. Cool? Can I get any hearts or some thumbs up or some something? Are you on board with this? Okay, just checking in. Let me get a sip of water and we'll move on. Okay, Victoria says, by clearing, you mean find a safe way to vent the rage or whatever around it. Yes. Now, there's a lot more that I could go into around this, like I said, which we'll be doing in the program. But for now, I just want to at least give you a tip. So venting, that's a great word. A little better than verbal vomit, thank you. So yes, you're venting, the venting you want to see is like releasing the pressure valve, right? You just want to get it to move, but it's for you, not for anybody else. So you could go for a walk and vent to the trees. You could put it on a paper and then burn it. You could do a voice memo and then delete it. Make sure you don't leave it around, because that heaviness stays with you, right? We're looking for ways to move the energy. Okay, let's see. Sandra says, so if I'm single since years, is it because I've accumulated a lot and not having transformed it? I am actually vomiting a lot in meditation as meditation practice. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Sandra. So, there's going to be a few things going on. Definitely there's probably something to clear for you around relationships. So if you desire to be in partnership, have you done a lot of cleanup on aisle 5 in your past relationships? Have you forgiven people? Have you found peace with them? Have you released them? There's a lot there that could be creating a muck up in the field to call in somebody else. Now, at the same time, it's not always that simple too, because there's divine timing. Like, I'm single and haven't, would love to be in partnership, but I can feel that there's a reason I'm not, and I'm doing all the deep work at the same time. And I feel like there's something for me to do around my purpose and my power first, and then I think it will happen. I don't know. So we're all trying to figure this out together, but I would say it's not going to hurt to do the cleanup and to see what you can start to open up. Right? And then we've got 2 more steps that we're going to get to too, which will also support the process. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Stephanie says, write it on toilet paper and flush it. That's a great idea. I've never heard that. I love it. That's brilliant, because it is shit, basically. So why not flush it down the toilet? Okay. Awesome. Okay. This is fun. I'm taking a sip of water. Okay. Now step 2 is going to be even more exciting. One of my favorite conversations is, so step 2 is learning how to surrender and be in your feminine and allowing your partner to be your hero. That's a deep one, because generally as women leaders, we're not so good at the surrendering thing, right? Like, we learned how to be potent, powerful, independent women. And so we had to figure it all out on our own. So we don't necessarily trust that if we surrender, someone else has got it under control, especially because we probably tried it in the past and it didn't go so well. So this is an interesting journey, but the trick is we have to surrender first, and we have to heal all our stuff around that first, and then the force that can rise up to take that place for us that we can trust will come next. We don't get to call that in first and then trust. Have a great example of a strong masculine pole that we can surrender to. We need to surrender first. Does that make sense? So let me be brief here too to say that when I use the terms masculine and feminine, I'm talking about the engine of the universe, of like the way it's the positive pole and the negative pole. I could just as easily say left brain and right brain, testosterone and masculine, testosterone and estrogen, yin and yang, right? Like these are just engines of the universe. And so we're talking about archetypal energies here of the feminine and masculine. So briefly, the feminine is very much in the formless state. She is that raw power. She is spark and radiance, and she is a beingness. She's a delighting in pleasure. She's creative force, right? Like these are all feminine qualities. And then feminine archetypal qualities. And then masculine archetypal qualities, there is form, there's direction, there's being a provider and being of service, there's structure, there's achievement, there's competition, right? So these are all masculine archetypal forms. Now, when we have an exalted masculine and an exalted feminine, now we've got what we talked about in the last step of like the positive pole and the negative pole. So this is where positive and negative and the semantics get tricky, because in this framework, the masculine is positive, but we're talking about like physics here in a way, right? Like electrons and protons. So the masculine is positive because it's a directional outward going energy. It's the yang. Whereas the feminine is negative because she's receptive and passive, like electrons. This is where it gets complicated, but I totally geek out on this. Now, to create that arc of polarity, though, we need both. So if you're trying to be a strong, independent woman and you are controlling things and trying to coach your partner and take care of your partner. And of course, this is outside of gender, right? So we could be talking about two women together, two men together, and it could be a man and a woman together. But there's still ideally one of the partners plays the more feminine role and one of the partners plays the more masculine role. And you also can switch too, by the way, like it doesn't have to be fixed. But to create that arc of polarity, you need people at the other end of the spectrum. Because if everyone tries to be like, I'm very integrated, I'm a masculine and feminine, or I'm androgynous and I don't necessarily care about gender, what happens is it neutralizes things and then there's no arc of polarity. So that's not to say that non-binary there's nothing wrong with that per se, but we want to get comfortable on the full end of the spectrum, right? So to create a wild love affair, we need that arc of polarity. And again, we need to be comfortable the negative side of things, negative, and that's where the dark feminine comes in to support us, right? So this is a big one for us powerful women, is learning how to surrender. Because what I see in all of my clients that I work with privately is I'm always having to get them to learn how to surrender more and release the masculine pull. Because if you as a woman are hanging on to the masculine pull because you don't trust your partner and you're like, I gotta get it done because I don't trust this other person to do it, then there's no room for your partner to ever step up and claim it. You're hogging the masculine pull. So you need to let go, lean back, probably shut up, and trust and surrender and leave space for your partner to step up and take the masculine pull. And you need to trust that they will. So this is deep because we got wounds upon wounds upon wounds as women, not trusting the masculine. And of course, possibly having very valid reasons for that. But at the same time, I'm going to challenge you to look at what role you may have had in setting that up. You know, I was married in the past, and I can see so many places where I emasculated my ex-husband. I didn't mean to. We were working on all this, the polarity stuff. But I could see where I didn't lean back, where I tried to help him or something. Like, it just, ladies, no coaching your partner, no helping your partner, nothing. You let them figure it out themselves and you trust them to do it. If you start to coach them, if you start to help them, you don't even want to give advice unless you're asked. I mean, that's a different story. But as women, we need to learn how to lean back shut up. I mean, I'm just going to be blunt with that because I've seen so many women interrupt their men constantly because we women do probably operate a little bit quicker than men. It's just the way it goes. And so because the men might take a little longer, we can't handle the space and the silence. And so we just start talking over them and we interject and we just fuck up the whole thing. I want you to realize, women, like we need to take some serious responsibility here of like what's gone awry between the sexes. A lot has to do with us. And we need to be the ones to do some cleanup here and learn how to be in the feminine if we want our partner in the masculine. Okay. So let me see any comments or anything so far. Coco says, I feel the same about calling a divine partner. It's about stepping more into our purpose first. Yes. For some of us, that may be the path. And it just, it's our journey around all of that. So we don't know what the divine timing is. I think there's something potent about falling in love with ourselves, finding integration on the inside before we call in someone to explore a relationship with on the outside, right? And, the part of the feminine operating system is very much about healing our inner masculine as women, because all people have an inner masculine and an inner feminine, whether you are in a male body or a female body or anything in between, because it's the engine of the universe. Again, it's the yin and the yang, right? So we all have both inside of us. You want to shift how the men are showing up in your world, ladies, then you heal your inner masculine. Because more than likely, the men in your world are reflections of your own inner masculine. That's a deep truth right there. Just drop that for you on the day before Valentine's Day. So that's a huge piece of the puzzle because for me, the feminine operating system is not just about the feminine. It's about our natural design as women. And so we need to bring our feminine into her exalted state, masculine into his exalted state inside us, and then bring them together into divine union to consummate and procreate. And this is how we run our businesses, right? So, okay. So back to the polarity and women learning how to surrender. There was something I learned in an Alison Armstrong workshop years ago. Hopefully you can still hear me with the claim. She said that if you ask a question of men, you need to wait for the answer. And what happens is the men are what she calls going to the well. So as women, we get immediate answers and we respond, right? But if you ask a question of a man, you need to, again, shut up, lean back, wait. And the man or the person in the more masculine role needs to go to the well, go get the bucket, think about the bucket, pick up the water, start reeling up that bucket, get the bucket, and then, it's a process. If you start to pay attention to this, it's fascinating because men work differently than us, ladies, and we need to understand, Alison Armstrong says that we can't treat men like hairy women. It doesn't work, and we're expected them to operate like us, and they don't. So you want to learn to ask a question and then wait and let him or the person in the masculine role come back with the answer and give them time and space, and don't hog up all the airtime. So that's a really good tip. All right. So the dark feminine comes in this process of learning how to surrender so that we can make our man our hero or our partner our hero, because she knows when we're not surrendering. And that means if we're not surrendering, we're in control and we're probably gripping and grasping. And that doesn't serve our mission and it doesn't serve our power either. Ideally, we learn how to surrender into the arms of the divine. And I've talked in other classes about the fire hose of the divine moving through us, that we are all expressions of the divine, longing to know itself through us. And there's so much more support available to us, but we have to get out of the way, clean up our debris, and allow the support of the divine. We need to surrender. So we can do this to our partners in our lives, but we also want to do that with the divine. And the roosters crow and they say yes. So, all right, let me give you a nice solid tip of a way that you can work with this. Let me see if any other comments. Victoria said, wasn't sure if I would, but as a single woman, I'm really enjoying this. And I love the red dress. Can we see it all? Yes, you can in a moment. Victoria says, I do this to my children. Strikes me it's relevant about relating to all people, not just our partners. Yes, for sure. And especially sons, right? Like, and daughters, of course, too, certainly to the children. But we really just notice where you don't give someone space, probably because of the discomfort of maybe it's not at your speed, right? Like, give people space to find their way. Otherwise, it's a bit of like an overbearing kind of helicoptering, sort of smothering kind of energy, right? I don't know if that's exactly what you mean, but that's kind of what I got from the question. So yeah, there's a place where we all need to just lean back more. And it can be hard because we're very smart and we often know the answers to things and we often know how to do things better, right? I get it. You got to turn that off because you're working too hard, basically. Like, let other people do some stuff, but they can't if you're in the way and controlling everything, right? So one of the ways to learn how to surrender more and allow your partner to be your hero is, first of all, clean up your debris, like we talked about in step 1. But really, secondly, appreciations. Like, how can you appreciate your partner more? Like, look for ways to appreciate. Like, all you have to do is, wow, I really appreciated when you did that thing. And I think in Alison Armstrong world, they say too, ideally you appreciate them and you tell them how it impacted you. I believe the masculine likes to hear it in that way. So not just like, oh, that was a nice restaurant, but like, wow, that restaurant was amazing. And I felt so cared for when you pulled out the chair for me, right? Like, now the masculine is like, ooh, I did good, right? So men are dying to be our hero. They are dying to be of service. They just want to know that they're making us happy. And if we're not happy, then they're bummed. And us being happy has a lot to do on the inside, outside of them, right? So there's going to be something for them to do too. But if you're castrating them and then they can't ever make you happy, everybody loses, right? Like, it's just a clusterfuck, unfortunately. So you want to look for ways to start to appreciate your partner and how it impacted you. So I'll challenge you, for those of you in partnership, why don't you start with at least 2 appreciations a day? And you don't even have to tell them what you're doing, but give them little moments of appreciation. And in that, you will start to see more of the good things that they do, right? You're going to start to train yourself to look for proof. And then also, you watch, when you give a masculine partner an appreciation, they'll puff up. You will literally watch their chest rise up. It's amazing. So start to appreciate your partner more, and that will start to show you like how to create more of an arc of polarity and lead to more of a wild love affair. Now, it's coupled with the things I said earlier. Practice leaning back. For those of you in partnership, try it at dinner. Try leaning back and feeling your body and your curves and your hips. Like, be in the receptive, passive, feminine principle of yin and see what happens. For those of you going on dates who are single, same thing. Lean back. Feel into your hips. Put your attention on pussy. Like, be in that feminine space and see what happens. No leaning forward, right? So this is a place that you can play as well. And also practice being quiet. Leave space for people. Don't take up all the space, right? So those are some nice, good, solid tips of how to create the arc of polarity and lead to a wild love affair with your partner. Any comments? Any questions? Stephanie says, what do you do if they reject the appreciation? Let it go. I would be very surprised that they will reject the appreciation. Now, if you mean we women do this, if someone gives me an appreciation and I'm like, oh, this whole thing, but you look amazing, right? Like, we deflect it. I don't know that men do it that often. Or if they do, that's okay. It still got in. Just keep going. Like, don't keep going in the moment, but try again another time. And maybe try to deliver it in a slightly different way. Okay, here's the tricky thing though. If you deliver the appreciation and you have a lot of charge in your background, then they probably won't hear it. That's why step 1 is so important. You got to do cleanup on aisle 5 first to clear your charge and your resentments and your wounds. Because if you're like, I really appreciated when you took out the trash, and underlying that is like, because you didn't fucking do it any other day, motherfucker, they'll hear that. They're going to feel our energetics, right? So this is why step one is so important, to clean the muddy window pane. And then if the appreciation is true, I guarantee they'll receive it. And if they don't, that's okay. Try again. And maybe try changing the words a little bit differently. Try different things. Like as women, I'll say for myself, I want to leave every man better than when I found them. And so I can play with this even if I'm not in partnership everywhere, with the barista, with the taxi Uber driver, like I'll say to a man of like, you just made my day. You're my hero today. And you watch them puff up. It's amazing. And so we women can do way more of that, build up and feed the men. I could talk about this for days. I think there's going to be a course around this at some point because I'm so passionate about it, but this is pieces of it for today. So I hope that's helpful. Any other questions? Okay, great. All right, so now we're going to move on to step 3, how to create a wild love affair and how your dark feminine helps you spark a spicy relationship makeover. One moment, keep you waiting. Okay, so now step 3 is taking on, hang on, make sure my water doesn't tip over. It's taking on the responsibility for cultivating our own pleasure and turn on. Now, we've been taught that our partner is responsible for our turn on. If they only did it right, or if they made me feel a certain way, then I would be turned on and in my pleasure. Nope. It's our responsibility to learn how to cultivate our own turn on. Here's the thing as women, this is part of our hugest power. Like turn on is what I would call the electricity of our vitality, of our vibrancy, of our radiance. Like that place when you're turned on, right? Where maybe you put on a dress that makes you feel like $1,000,000 and you feel like that little skip in your step and you just feel like a lightness in your being and you feel maybe a little flirty and spicy too. That's turn on. It's an electricity and a power, and we have access to it all the time as women, but we need to know how to cultivate it and look for what I call our on-ramp, right? We're all going to have slightly different on-ramps to our own turn on, but we need to learn our mechanisms as women. We need to learn the machinery, and that's our responsibility, because if you're in your turn on, you will have a wild love affair with your partner, and it will also support you in dating as well. But we need to take on that responsibility, ladies, and learn how to do that for ourselves. So ways to do that, first of all, turn on is going to be in the body, always, so creating a loving and beautiful relationship with our body, making our body our allies is really important. And learning how to feel good in it, learning how to cultivate pleasure, learning how to I think you can see it. Do I even need to put that into words? When you can feel the difference. I'm slowing down. I'm getting into my body. I'm finding my breath. Really, I should have been talking from this place the whole time. And this is where we don't know how to, I barely even know how to do it, even though this is what I teach, right? Like we're so still left brain and right brain. Like I'm really passionate about helping women rewire from the left brain to the right. But to talk and quote unquote teach from this place of turn on, it can totally be done, but it takes a little effort. So I'm challenging myself to do that now. Can you see the difference though? When I slow down and get into my own turn on. Okay. Now, if you take on the responsibility of your own turn on and cultivating that, and then you bring that to your partner, don't you think that's going to create more of a wild love affair? Because here's the thing, the masculine is fed by our turn on and our pleasure and our desire. Same thing of like how they're dying to be of service to make us happy. If we offer our turn on almost like as a gift to them, they are fed. And guess what? Men are parched because we don't do this enough, and it's so tricky because I know so many of us have wounds, obviously with the Me Too movement that's been coming up. So we might feel like, why would I offer my turn on as a gift? Because, it might feel unsafe. It might feel like you don't deserve it. You might feel like you'll just draw in unwanted attention. I get the complexities here. But at the same time, I 100% believe that if we're okay on the inside with our own turn on and it's pure, without any little hooks in it, like looking for attention or something of that sort, it takes a little bit of doing to tease apart. We'll talk about that in the Dark Feminine program for sure. If the turn on is pure, then it is a nourishment for the men, and you won't get inappropriate attention back. I very rarely get inappropriate attention. It happens, but it's rare because I'm working very hard for it to be pure. And then it's usually received pure. But if we have old wounds around it, or some of us actually want unwanted attention unconsciously, so we have a little bit of a hook when we offer our turn on. And so that's kind of hooking people and then gives us the unwanted attention that we don't want. So it's tricky, but this is again, like emotional power hygiene. We just need to keep cleaning up our stuff, right? So the turn on can be very pure, and we want to learn how to access that, and it will revolutionize our relationship. Okay, let me just see if anything on the Facebook group. Okay, no comments or questions yet. All right, so let me just see. I'm going to tune in for a second, see if there's anything more I want to add to that. And actually, let me look at my notes too. Okay, so we're going to do an embodiment practice. I want to give you some ways to activate the turn on for yourself so that you can take this with you into your world. That perhaps before your partner gets home tonight, you can get into your turn on first and see what happens. If you're single, then the next time you go on a date, or maybe before you do any interactions with a interested partner, get into your turn on and see what happens. So we're going to do an embodiment practice to get into our turn on in just a moment, but I'm going to make you wait a little bit more. And first, let's review what we've talked about so far. Okay, so it's all about how the dark feminine comes in. Oh yeah, let me share a little bit more too about like the dark feminine and turn on. Your dark feminine knows how much power you have, and she knows where you're leaking it and where you're not in it. And she knows how much power is in your turn on. So your dark feminine wants you to come in and access, thank you, roosters, access your turn on, because she knows how powerful that is. And I really believe there's a place for this in our business too. I mean, again, I could talk about this for days. Don't get me started. But back in the seminal book, Think and Grow Rich from 1937, I think was the year, he wrote an entire chapter on sex transmutation after interviewing 500 self-made millionaires. So like even in the 1930s, they knew how important sex power was for business. So our turn on is related to that. So our dark feminine wants us to come in and access more of our turn on and expand beyond our comfort zone in our intimate life and our sensuality. Right? Because, I mean, we've all kind of squashed our sensuality in various ways because the culture is so shaming. I mean, it's sort of depressing. It's not sort of depressing. It's very depressing. And we need to start to normalize that, right? Like, so that's why I've been sharing, pretty sensual photos out in the open waters of Facebook, because I want to normalize this for us as women. And it's scary to do, but at the same time, there's so many levels to this too, right? Like I might do a photo shoot and I can see like, oh, actually my body looks really good in that photo, but I can see that it would be for the male gaze. And so I don't use it because that's not my point. My point is to model raw feminine power and start to normalize that for women because we don't see it out there in the world. And so the dark feminine is so tapped into our raw feminine power, and she wants to show us how to own more of it. And also in regard to turn on, she really wants to take us into the taboo too. Like the things you might be like, good girls don't do those things. Or even just, I'm not the type of woman that does those things. Guess what? You might be. You might just be squashing it. And it's like you almost want to go to where the taboo is because there's a lot of power there. Now, it's never about crossing your boundaries, of course, but I bet if you went to the edge of some of your taboos, there might be like a little bit of like that nervous sort of fear, kind of like that bubbly energy. That's actually turn on. And you want to learn how to be able to house that, because we need you being able to house all of your power for your purpose. So this is where the dark feminine comes in and wants us in more turn on, and wants us to explore beyond the edges of our sensual comfort zones. And then also the main goal of the dark feminine and how we get free is when we learn how to get off on all of it, that we don't look to just make life like Pollyanna, sunshiny and happy, because that's impossible. You don't like find happiness by making life perfect. You find happiness by getting off on it all, like the ups, the peaks, and the valleys, and riding the wave. So to learn how to, you got to access your turn on first to find the turn on in the whole ride. And then that's how you get free. So that's actually my goal, my desire, bringing the dark feminine out to all of us as women leaders, because when we learn how to get free, when we learn to find our turn on in all of life, then we will be more bold in our messaging. We will step out and kind of be a more amazing example of a woman in power and feminine power, not masquerading as men. There's so many aspects to this, right? So the dark feminine is super important, and turn on is a huge piece of the puzzle. That's actually a major one of the modules in the dark feminine program. Okay, so let's review. Victoria says, how do you tell the difference? I struggle with the good girl shame and the difference between being for the male gaze or not. You know, I would say it's a good question. For me, it's quite visceral. I can see where there's a little bit of like, oh, I just want to be hot. You know, I guess it's egoic versus pure in a way. So first of all, I think a woman has to understand what raw feminine power is in her body. I think you were with us on the Power Elite call, but we did an embodiment exercise where we explored that more. So if you didn't do that aspect of it, I invite you to go back, because if you get a feeling of the raw feminine power, I'm pretty sure you would have a visceral knowing of whether it's for the male gaze or not. And it's also like if you're attached, right? Like if you can feel yourself wanting something out of it. For me, because I do a lot of dance and movement, I just get into that space and I know I'm in my power, and I'm not looking to manipulate or get something from. Excuse me, I just need to cough. Interesting timing. And I think it's probably practice too, babe. Like I think it just takes some time to learn the difference, but I can usually feel like I posted a picture, I'm in Hawaii, right? And I was at the beach and I did a self-portrait, and I haven't done self-portraits in many, many months. And I used to be a photographer, as you know, Victoria. I've taken your pictures before years ago. So I want to get back to the self-portraits. And so I didn't have a tripod, I didn't have a lot of time. And so I took some pictures of me in a bathing suit, which is not my favorite thing to do, but I was at the beach, right? Anyway, the picture I posted, I was like, yeah, that's a little for the male gaze. I mean, it wasn't conscious, but I just didn't have time. I mean, I took a million photos and I was balancing it on a, piece of driftwood. And so I was like, okay, I got to get back into this because I want to find the purity of the raw feminine power. And it wasn't way off, but you know that place where someone's like, hey, like, look at my tits and my ass, right? Like, that's a little different from a woman just being like, it's like a power and potency in the difference. Yeah. Hope that helps a little bit. Okay. Feels like you're getting that. Great. Hannah says, thank you, darling. Not always yet. Yes, it does feel like my natural, easy state to be, trying to cut through masculine push. Great energy at the moment, and relax more into trust, even whilst there are lots of things to do in everyday life. I think you're like honey too. Thank you. So yes, I call it the patriarchal push. We've all been taught how to push, 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 and it takes a lot to rewire out of that into our feminine operating system. That's but I'm on it. Like, I'm going to write the manual. I want to keep creating spaces for it. I'm not saying I have it all figured out, but I'm going to create spaces where we figure it out together. And yes, it is a big deal to learn how to lean back more. So if we do it in our relationships, it will help us in our business as well. Okay, so let's review how to create a wild love affair with the support of the dark feminine to create a spicy relationship makeover. Number one, we got to clean up our debris and work on releasing our own charge so that there's room for the arc of polarity to happen in intimacy. Okay. Step two was very much about learning how to surrender, to be in our feminine if we desire our partner to be in the masculine, and looking at ways where we're not doing that, and deeply learning how to be more in our yin, more in our beingness, more in our radiance, more in our turn on, more in our receptivity, right? Like in our place of allowing instead of like gripping and controlling, right? So then step three was cultivating and taking on responsibility for our own turn on and how that feeds men and gives us our own power. So cool, makes sense, and how to create a wild love affair, whether you're in a partnership or wanting to call one in. And so then that begs the next piece of, I would love to extend an invitation, and you get to say yes or no. And I want to extend an invitation to come into the dark feminine experience for women leaders, where we learn all of these things in real time of how to surrender to our power. Like, it's just so important for us as women leaders to learn how to work with the dark feminine, to cultivate more of our raw feminine power, because I just know it's going to take us to the next level of our purpose. And we're starting on Monday. It's starting very soon. It's a relaxed container. So I'm deciding when I'm going to close doors, but and we are starting on Monday. We've got some amazing women who've come in already. It's a deep dive. Like, it's a deep container in sisterhood where we're going to do the deep, deep, deep work, and so that we can go big. I mean, really, that's the goal, is that there will be impact in our purpose and in our business. And I'm not going to guarantee anything, because that would be masculine. We're going to be in the realm of the feminine, in the realm of feeling, in the realm of power, in the realm of beingness. And I know that that helps our business, because I've found, back when I was doing the work when it was called Pleasure CEO, and I had a 6-month course called Pleasure CEO Priestess, I thought I was going to teach more business connected to the feminine. But what I learned is that if I just help a woman unleash more of her raw feminine power, I didn't need to coach her. She knew what she needed to do. So I was like, well, that's way more efficient. Let me just help keep unleashing more raw feminine power. And then we all get to go out and do what we need to do. So that's what this course will be about. So it's called Dark Feminine Experience. And it's an invitation to do deep work and explore the dark feminine and learn how to work with her. Because I really believe, I'm just going to keep saying it. I know everyone's going to be talking about this. Like, it's going to be the work soon, very soon. So if you want to be on the forefront with me and learn it now and be like the pioneers in it all, come on in, because this is a very interesting time. And if you're feeling sparked by her at all, sounds like she's calling your name, right? So even if you've been going through a lot in life too, like, if a lot of relationship struggles are happening, or, maybe some health issues, or maybe the business sort of falling apart, to me, that's all the dark feminine calling your name and coming in with her sword to slice away that which doesn't serve and that which needs to die for you to be reborn. So briefly, let me just share the journey that we're going to go on with this dark feminine experience, because it's no joke. So step one is we die together, because we cannot be reborn until we learn how to die to the old ways. So I'm going to guide that process. I'm going to give us techniques and tools and like the backstory of why this is important. There's a lot of beautiful aspects of this, and it will change us forever, like more. So step one, we die together. Step two, we gather raw feminine power together. We're going to deep dive into what raw feminine power is. How does it feel? What does it look like? How do we access it? How do we understand it? How do we learn how to work with it? And how do we use it in our business? So that's going to be exciting, because I am slightly power obsessed and thrilled to get to share that. And then step three is we expand our sex power together. That's where we're going to go into the turn on. We're going to go into the taboo. We're going to go into that place of surrender and really explore, how do we live a turned on life? And then how do we get turned on by everything? Ideally, that's the end game. Do y'all realize that? Like, to me, if you want to win at life, it's basically get turned on by it all. That's it. I'm pretty sure when we're all at the end of life, like, that's what we're going to remember, as if we enjoyed the whole ride. And no one's taught us how to do that. So we do need an education around it all. And we need a deep womb and container in sisterhood to figure that out, right? So step 3 is we expand sex power together. Step 4 is we learn emotional mastery together, because we are emotional creatures as women, and we can't get taken down by our emotions. We need to learn how to use them and allow them and let them move through us and clean up the old ones that are in the way, serving as obstacles and blocks to what we came here to do, right? So we have to learn how to love our emotions and learn mastery over them. So I'm going to give you like real practical ways to express the emotions, to move with the emotions, to clear the emotions, like all of it. We're going to learn emotional mastery together. Okay. So then step 5 is we go into the basement together. It's like, so this program is so dastardly, but I kind of love how dark it is. So for me, the basement is where our core wounds live, and our shadows and our projections and all of those things that we wanted to toss over our shoulder into, that we felt shame around. But that's where our power is in the basement. And I've talked about that before, that many of us got kind of freaked out by what was in the basement. It's intense, right? So we threw down a false floor over the basement and then built a whole life on top of it. And so we often think we're doing the deep work, but we're really just going down to the false floor. But not in this program. We're going into the basement, and we're going to excavate, and we're going to touch the things that are super intense. But at the same time, you're going to come through on the other side with so much power. And I know that can be tricky, because it often feels like death, like you'll die if you go feel that thing. But you can see that we died in step 1. So you'll now know that's no longer scary, and you'll learn how to die well. And so that you can feel the thing that makes you feel like you're going to die, and you will get to the other side. I promise. I've held space for so many women around this process, and it's what we need now. Okay. So then step 6 is we're going to bring it all together. And here is where we embrace dark feminine alchemy together. And this is where we're going to learn how to live this in real time and have the practical tools and like almost a recipe of, okay, what happens when I, have a client that wants to step out of a program? Okay, what happens when I have some dumb comment on Facebook? Okay, what happens when I have a fight with my partner? And it's like, okay, here we go. We got our toolkit, ladies. Like, we can't be victims and at the expense of, feeling like, oh, wow, what was me? It happened to me. Life is so bad. It's like, nope. I'm going to learn how to get off on this, and here are my tools and my techniques in order to do that. And I'm going to have a sisterhood behind me in the process. So this is like, really, we're going to roll up our sleeves and like learn this dark feminine work and be completely changed women on the other side. And I will say, I'm going to go through this process with all of you too, right? Like, even going through this experience of birthing this program, I've changed so much. Are you kidding me? Like, when you dedicate yourself to the dark feminine, she works you, but you also come out better on the other side. Like, someone reached out to me, a colleague reached out, and she was like, this post you just wrote is so spicy and so amazing. And I wrote back and I was like, I'm getting kind of good at like the bold posts on Facebook. And she's like, yeah, you are. You're amazing. And I was like, that's the dark feminine. Like, she has taught me how to be more bold. She's taught me to write that invitation page that says we die together, step 1. What? Where have you seen that before? Ever out in the world? Like, that was a bold move for me, and a little edgy, a lot edgy, to be honest. And then she's taught me how to, really deepen and embody what I'm here to do too. Like, I think for those of you who've been following me for a while, and I know some of you are here, I think I've deepened, right? Like, drastically over the years, but even more so in the last 6 months. And in that process, as I deepen, I don't have to work as hard in my business, right? Like there are women reading this invitation page and signing up without ever talking to me. I haven't even seen them like on any of like my materials, and they're just signing up. So there's a transmission that happens when you learn how to work with the dark feminine, and you don't have to work as hard. So this is what I want for everyone. And I want to get there even more too. So I want to create a space where we do that together. So you can find all about it at darkfeminine.com. Now, you may decide you want to have a conversation, and that's okay too. Just PM me, let me know that you feel like, I think this is for me. And I'd like to have a conversation to explore. And that's totally cool too. You know, it's a deep undertaking to commit to the dark feminine. So if I can support you in that process, I will. And I'm definitely sending out the call to those of you who want to do this deep work together. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be so deep and rich. And I mean, you know, it's going to be intense. I'm not going to lie. This shit's going to probably hit the fan in some one way or another. I mean, maybe for all of us, but we're going to have sisterhood and support. Shit hits the fan all the time anyway, right? Why not be deliberate about learning how to work through when the shit hits the fan in an elegant way and to ride the waves, right? Like I've told the story how a few weeks ago I was in the Oakland Hills when I was in Oakland and staying with a friend, and he allowed me to borrow his second car, and the car got stolen out of the driveway. And I left the keys in the car because I was coming back from storage with all kinds of bags. And meanwhile, no one should have stolen the car, right? But still, I went to this whole place about it's my fault, because on some level it is. And of course it isn't at the same time. Do you think I had to learn how to ride that wave? That could have totally taken me down and out of my launch. But no, I was like, okay, dark feminine must have something to do with me here. So, all right. And so I used all the tips and tricks and deepened. And then that's when I was able to write the invitation page from that deeper place. I used the shit hitting the fan. There's no way out of it. We're always going to have the shit hitting the fan, but we need to learn how to use the power in it for good. Does that make sense? So if you're interested, let me know. darkfeminine.com. See if the page speaks to you. And if you feel like you would like to have a conversation, reach out, let me know, and we can do that. I think I'm going to have some office hours tomorrow on Friday. And then we start on Monday. So, oh, and there's some juicy stuff too. Like I'll let you look at the page for the details, but there's some private coaching in there too. There's one 90-minute session included in it. And if you're in the first 20 people, you get an additional 90-minute session, because I wanted to make sure that nobody got stuck in the dark feminine, and that I could kind of get my sight on you and your spot and reach in and grab that raw feminine power and pull it out of you if you need that help. And we can also work on business pieces. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. So I'll let you look at the page to see if that speaks to you, darkfeminine.com. And then we'll do an embodiment piece to finish up. And then let me just check and see if there's any comments. Okay, hang on. Okay, fabulous. So would you like an embodiment practice to get into your turn on? I need some feedback. Because otherwise I could just finish up now. Let me see if anyone is with me and you'd like to continue and get into the body. I think we have a little lag on Facebook. Ladies, shall I finish up now, or would you like an embodiment practice? Okay, we got some yeses on Facebook. Thank you. You know, it's important, just like, I want a feedback loop here, right? Like, I'm not just talking out into the universe. I want to make sure this is wanted. I don't want to kind of force anybody into anything, right? Okay, so I'm going to invite us to our feet. And Victoria, I will show you the full dress. Now, let me see if I can, let's see if I bring it down. Here's the dress. It's a simple one, but it travels well. So I hadn't had it in the rotation to travel, but I grabbed it when I was in Oakland. So thankfully that wasn't in the car when it got stolen. So that's good news. Okay, Cherie says very pretty. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into our body. So I'm going to invite you to your feet, and I'm going to have to stay kind of close so you can hear me, but let's basically just start to get into our bodies. Now, we did this a little bit the other day, but let's do it again because we've been up in our heads, right? Like talking, some of you, I'm sure many of you have been sitting. So let's get into the body. So we're going to start by just shaking our hands, loosen up your jaw, make some funny faces. Ah. And then let the shaking come up into the shoulders and then down into the hips. And then shake out the legs if you can balance. And then just shake it all. Maybe a little sound on the exhale. We're looking to move energy, right? This is like embodiment practices are woven into all of my work because as women, all our power lives in here and we need to learn how to move literally in our body, but that's also going to help us move our power and our energy and our businesses, right? Okay. All right, so let's do some hip circles. So wide stance, and then just nice big hip circles as a place to begin to start to get out of the head and down into the body. Really push those feet into the earth. Ground. Get into your haunches. I'm just having a conversation with someone. You know, many people have asked me, if you've seen my photo series from Bali, they'll say, so what's up with all the open-legged photos, Christina? And I'm like, really? That's what you see, that my legs are open? I mean, it's like, I can't even understand that. Stay with the hip circles. but what it just doesn't even register what that means. But I guess it's unusual to see. I'm not opening my legs. I'm getting into my body. I'm like bending my knees. I'm getting into my animal body. I call it getting into my haunches. And by the way, this is how I dance, right? So it's not me trying to be something, but I was amazed. And even embodied women said it to me too. Like it seemed like it touched a nerve. So anyway, fuck that. Like open your legs. Basically, this is how we're receptive and this is where our power is. Okay, other direction. Just push the feet down, bend the knees, find the hips. Okay, and so then I'm going to invite you to, no one's video is on, so I'm going to invite you, if it feels right, to place your hands on your genital region, on your hips. I use the word pussy in my life, but feel free to translate it to yoni or vagina or vulva. But I'm going to invite you to place your hands on pussy and see if you can stay with just a little gentle hip circle, just a way to stay in movement. You know, when we are moving in our bodies, we are in a state of yes to life. But when stuff gets intense and we're not moving and we're a little like this is a no, right? So if things are intense in life, a really simple tool is to just get in some movement. Imagining you're like seaweed in the ocean and a little bit of a hip circle, and all of a sudden your relationship to the tricky thing in life will shift. There's just like, this stuff can be so simple. Like they're like hacks, which is super masculine, but whatever. We need hacks into our feminine. Okay, so small little hip circles, hands on pussy. And I'm gonna invite you to close your eyes if that feels right. And we're gonna connect there for a moment. So I'm gonna invite you, and just try it out. I'm gonna invite you to put your attention on labia. See if you can isolate and put your attention, if you're trying it out, directly on labia. And then I want you to put your attention on clitoris. See if you can isolate and put your attention right on your clitoris. And then I invite you to put your attention on the vaginal canal and see if you can isolate and put your attention there. All right, so these are very simple ways to, first of all, get out of the head and connect down into the body and really get to know your body, right? Like we're doing this energetically with your intention and attention, right? Of course, there's lots of ways to get to know your body physically with touch and such, but for now, just really feel and imagine you're breathing in and out of your pelvic floor of pussy, right? Like imagine you're breathing in and out with her. And then pussy loves compliments. So see if you can just give her some compliments. Tell her how beautiful she is, or how powerful she is, or how much you love her. Because she's like the furnace in your turn on. So you want to get connected to her first. And just notice what you feel on a sensation level. Is there a tingling? Is there a warmth? Is there a moisture? Let all of that be perfectly fine. And then the next step is I want to invite you, so this is going to be in your mind's eye, I want you to bring to mind someone you feel an attraction toward. Now it could be your partner, or it could be your celebrity crush. It's just going to be in your mind's eye. We're utilizing them for a minute. So bring to mind your crush, someone you feel attraction toward, and just kind of delight in this person, and just see them in your mind's eye. And notice if there's a little bit extra pizzazz happening in your genitals as you do. And just breathe with that. Delight in your attraction towards this person. And so I'm going to ask you a question on a scale of 1 to 10, and let's just see what number bubbles up. And don't judge the number because we're going to work with it. It's just information, okay? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you turned on right now? Okay, don't judge the number. Mine was like a 2. It's just information. It's feedback, right? So now I want you to imagine that there's almost like a volume knob to your turn on. And I want you to just decide to dial it up wherever it is, if it's a 2 or what have you. Sorry, I feel like there's ants all over my legs. Then just decide to dial it up. So I'm like at my 2, and I'm just deciding to savor that 2 and dial it up. We're experimenting here and exploring. Okay, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to take this even more into the body, but I wanted you to see how simple it is to access your turn on, even just through your intention and your mind's eye. So whatever level of turn on you might be at now, I want you to see if you can start to bring that through the body. And so we're looking for your on-ramp, and it's going to be different for each woman. We really need to learn our own machinery and how to find the turn on. Like you might want to just move really slow and in a languid way. Like imagine you cultivated a little turn on from that attraction in pussy, and you're just going to breathe it through the rest of the body. And you can see like I'm moving really slow. Notice if you start to speed up, right? Go into old ways of moving, like you can see that's not really a turn on, right? But if I slow down, it's like that languid space, and I get plugged into pussy, and I'm breathing that through the whole body. And we want to savor here too, right? Savoring is an amazing muscle for women. We don't do enough of it. So we're savoring, because savoring dials it up. That's another way to dial up goodness, okay? So savor and dial it up. Now, some of you may have a different access. So I know for me, sometimes like, what do you call that? Like resistance or contracting muscles. Like for me to feel my power, that helps me access turn on clearly. See, like, you know, accessing the primal is part of my work, right? That's part of my body of work. That's the raw feminine power. So that's part of my turn on, my on-ramp, right? Is like, so I sometimes if I'm at ecstatic dance or push up against a wall, or I just like want to feel my power. And then I'm just breathing that through the rest of my body. Some of you might like to access turn on through some intensity, like a little bit of pain, right? Or a grabbing. You can do that. See if that accesses your turn on. Some of you might like to access turn on through just loving, gentle touch. You know, maybe your touch love language and you just love touch, and can you give it to yourself? Maybe that helps you access your turn on. And some of you, it might be a bit more energetic. You know, you might want to kind of feel things in your energy body or touch your third eye or meditate and just find that turn on. For some of you might want to be like, let's just get right to the point. And you might, maybe you start to lightly stroke pussy as a way to gentle, like, you know, it doesn't have to be a full on self-pleasuring type thing. Maybe it's just gentle stroking of your clitoris and just see if that accesses turn on. Okay, so just play with that. And as you're accessing that turn on, you know, you might even, what if you imagine bringing in some thrusts, right? Like as if, okay, wait, you're bringing in some thrusts, and let's even bring in like your business or your purpose or your mission in the world, depending on where you're at in the process. And what if you're imagining that you're accessing that turn on and you're channeling it into your business? And you might even imagine it's a little like thrusting. I'm gonna have to use a swear word, but like as if you're fucking your business, right? Like, but ideally from that surrendered place too, right? And that feminine operating system. But can you imagine the thrusting? Okay, just for fun. This will be interesting. It'll be on the Open Waters of Facebook later, but whatever, we'll see how this goes. So let me, I'll do a little more full body. So like I can access the turn on through movement. And it doesn't have to be something like crazy overt. For me, it's slowing down, finding my breath, finding my power. Finding my curves, right? Feeling those curves. A little bit of that, maybe a little bit of grabbing, a little bit of like pushing. You can see like I'm now in a place of turn on. Can you see more radiance, right? I bet, I imagine the magnetism has gone up. Ideally, I would have learned how to do that for the whole call. I'm getting there, closer. All right, so anything you'd like to share from that experience or any questions? We'll finish up in a few moments. But I wanted you to see, like, this is something you could do. What did we do? We put our attention on pussy and we felt into her different body parts, the labia, the clitoris, the vaginal canal. We breathed in and out of pussy. We gave her some compliments. And then we imagined someone that we feel attraction toward, and we felt that turn on, then we dialed it up, and then we started to bring it into our body. So this is something you could do before you see your partner next, before you go on a date, before you do a Facebook Live, before you write a newsletter, before you have a sales call, right? Like these are all ways that you can access your turn on. Even so with the dark feminine, you know, I'm talking about how we really want to learn how to get off on it all, right? So say there's something tricky. If you can do this with the trickiness, so let's see if I can do this in real time. Oh God, it is so fucking hard. It's hilarious. Okay, I'm gonna do it with a stolen car, right? So if I can, I'm like in the turn on. Oh, it's really hard. I'm like setting a challenge for myself. Okay, but I'm gonna find the turn on in like walking out to the driveway and just like the fucking shock of the car being gone. but I'm gonna like, instead of like kind of shock, right? I'm gonna move with the intensity. It's just a sensation of the shock. And instead of shutting down around it all, I'm going to be like, wow, that was a wild ride, wasn't it? You know, and I had to call my friend and tell him, and we had to navigate it. But like, really, our friendship probably got closer because of it. And okay, oh, that's a workout. Okay, but I think, can you get an idea of what, of how accessing our turn on through our body can help us in relationship, but can also help us in life and our power and our business and all of those things. Yeah. So I'd love any feedback. Like, what was something that you got from the call today? We're going to finish up shortly. And or how this experience was for you, getting into your turn on. Can you see places where you could use it for yourself? I'd love to receive some words before we finish up. I do need to find the right bra for this dress, which I don't have quite yet. Okay, let's see. Coco says, love how easy it felt to dial it up. Awesome, right? Isn't it crazy? I don't know if it's as easy for everyone, but when it's easy, it's sort of shocking how simple it is. I know, I remember the first time I did it, I was like, that's all I had to do? So yes, these simple tools and tricks we can utilize for ourselves in our relationships and in our business. Sandra says, this work is just the base in life and business. Thank you for addressing and naming so clearly. This is reclamation. I just so lovingly effed myself. Fabulous. Great work. Okay. Any feedback? Any sharings? And I would love to invite all of you here and all of you watching the replay, please go check out thedarkfeminine.com and see if it speaks to you. If it doesn't, it's totally cool. It's not your path. But for those of you, if it is your path and you have some questions or you want to explore with me, reach out and let's have a conversation, because I know there's more women out there who are supposed to be in this container. I can feel you. I can feel you, and I think you know, and I don't know if it's fears or just not sure. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I can be of support, because I want to find the right women who are meant to go on this journey and for us to do this deep dive together. And I don't know, I can see it being world changing myself, but certainly it'd be life changing for all of us, for sure. darkfeminine.com. Victoria says, thank you so much, Christina. When you're in business alone, I can see this would be an excellent creative tool. Yeah, for sure. And Hannah says, so good, Christina. Okay, all right. Well, I'm excited to see who's going to be joining me for the Dark Feminine experience. We begin on Monday. The modules, the materials will be released on Monday, and then we'll have our first group call the following Thursday. So see if you're meant to be one of them. Would love to have you. I'm sending you lots of love. Thank you for spending your time with me today, day before Valentine's Day. It's perfect to get juiced up into our turn on, right? And may you all have wild love affairs forevermore and deepen your relationship with the Dark Feminine. Okay, take care, everyone.